The royal seal hit the desk with a sound like a judgment. Mira Dawnhollow did not look up when she placed it there. She had spent 7 years learning how to be invisible, and she had gotten very good at it. She straightened the edges of the handover note she had prepared. 14 pages, every detail accounted for, every loose thread tied, and she allowed herself exactly 3 seconds to look at the throne room she had kept alive with her bare hands. Then she walked out. For hours earlier, the Embervale Festival had been a masterpiece. For 1,000 guests, 11 days of preparation, not a single seam showing. Lord Corvin Hale had found her just before the first torches were lit, gripping her arm with both hands. Mira, the Ashford delegation is seated next to the Veyron table. They cannot be next to each other. There will be blood. There won't, she had said. I moved them an hour ago. Ashford is at the east wing, Veyron near the fountain. They'll never see each other. Corvin had exhaled like a man stepping off a cliff and finding solid ground. What would we do without you? She had smiled. The smile she had perfected, warm, efficient, revealing nothing. What she had not told Corvin was that she had overheard something 20 minutes earlier. She had been moving through the corridor behind the great hall, checking the candle arrangements on the inner pillars, when she heard Idrin's voice through the stone wall. Low, private, the voice he used when he thought no one was listening. The keep already sees her as queen, you know, Corvin had said. Half the council thinks it's only a matter of time. A pause. Then Idrin's voice, careful and quiet. Things might have been different. If Vessen had stayed. Mira had stood very still. She had counted to 5. She had straightened the nearest candle. She had gone back to work. But something had shifted, quietly and permanently, like a stone settling at the bottom of a river. And by the time the festival was over and the last guests had gone and the great hall was silent and gold with dying torchlight, Mira Dawnhollow had made a decision. She had gone to the throne room. She had placed the seal on his desk. And now she was walking away. The morning she arrived 7 years ago, Ironfeld Keep had been running on rumors and fraying rope. The previous steward had left in disgrace. 3 supply routes had collapsed. The Winter Council had not met in 4 months. High King Idrin Vale had been on the throne for 11 days, and he looked like a man trying to hold water in his fists. Mira had walked into his first council session, set a document on the table and said, "Your border agreement with the Dusk Territories expires in 6 weeks. If you don't renew it, you lose the Northern Grain route. I've drafted the renewal. You need to sign it today." Idrin had looked at her for a long moment. "Who are you?" "Mira Dawnhollow. I managed the Caldray household accounts for 3 years. Before that, I was in Veyron territory running logistics for the eastern trade posts." She had paused. "I know how kingdoms break. I'd rather help you keep this one." He had signed the document. He had given her a title with no proper name, Administrative Council, which meant everything and nothing, and over 7 years she had quietly become the invisible architecture of everything Ironfeld was. She negotiated the trade agreements. She managed the border truces. She expanded the schools in the southern townships, and made sure the winter supply routes held even in the bad years. She sat in every council session and presented every data point and solved every crisis before it became a crisis. And she loved him. She had not meant to. It had happened the way rivers cut through stone, not in one dramatic moment, but slowly over years, wearing away her resistance one quiet conversation at a time. "You don't have to stay late," he had told her once, finding her at her desk at midnight, maps spread across every surface. "I know," she had said. "The festival preparations can wait until morning." They can't, actually. The Veyron delegation arrives 2 days early. I found out an hour ago. He had pulled up a chair. "Then I'll stay too." They had worked through the night, and she had told herself that meant something. She had told herself that for 7 years. Lady Vessen Caldray arrived on a grey morning in the 3rd week of autumn, riding a pale horse, wearing a traveling cloak the color of winter wheat. The reception in the courtyard was warm. Lords and stewards she had known before her 5-year absence greeted her with genuine pleasure, and she received them all with a grace that looked effortless because it was. Mira stood beside Idrun as Vesin dismounted. She watched his face. There it was. That thing she had never seen before. Something unlocked in him. A loosening around the eyes, a breath let go. Like a man remembering a word he had forgotten he knew. Vesin, he said, stepping forward. My king. But she smiled when she said it, and it was not a formal smile. Vesin turned to Mira next. Her eyes were quick and intelligent. You must be the woman who keeps this kingdom from falling apart. Idrun wrote about you. He exaggerates, Mira said. He said you resolved a trade dispute in 12 minutes that 3 lords had failed to settle in 3 weeks. Vesin tilted her head. That doesn't sound like exaggeration. Mira had nothing to say to that. She made a note to ensure Vesin's guest quarters were prepared correctly and excused herself. Her hands were perfectly still. The shift happened slowly the way most damage does. Idrun began asking Vesin's opinion in council. Small things at first, her read on a delegation's tone, her sense of which alliance was worth pursuing. Then larger things. Then he rerouted a question Mira had already answered, asking Vesin to weigh in as well, as though Mira's answer had been a first draft. Sela Wren found Mira in the records room one evening, surrounded by supply inventories. Sela was the only person in the keep who said true things without dressing them first. He's different with her, Sela said without preamble. He's reconnecting with someone he knew before, Mira said without looking up. Mira, the Ashford grain contracts need reviewing before the end of the month. I found a clause that could cost us. She was supposed to marry him. Sela sat down. Before her family sent her abroad. It was arranged. He never spoke about it afterward. He just came back to work. Mira set down her pen. You were here, Sela said softly. You were always here. And he needed someone to keep the kingdom running. Mira picked the pen back up. I know. The silence between them was the loudest thing in the room. The night of the banquet, Mira wore gray. Not because she had nothing else. Because gray was the color of someone who was not trying to be seen. She had organized every detail of that evening. The seating arrangements, the menu, the order of the toasts, the precise temperature of the wine for the northern delegates who preferred it cool. She had done it the way she did everything. Completely quietly without a single crack in the surface. Vesin had worn gold. She looked luminous. She sat 2 seats from Idrun, and the conversation at the high table moved toward her the way fire moves toward air. Naturally, inevitably, without anyone deciding it should. Mira watched from her position further down the table and catalogued it the way she catalogued everything. Dispassionately. Efficiently. She was very good at lying to herself. It was after the 3rd toast that she slipped out to check the candle arrangements in the side corridor. Old habit. She was passing the alcove behind the great hall when she heard them, Idrun's voice and Corvin's, low and private on the other side of the stone wall. The keep already sees her as queen, you know, Corvin said. Half the council thinks it's only a matter of time. A pause. 1 breath. 2. Things might have been different, Idrun said quietly. If Vesin had stayed. Mira stood completely still. She did not move for a long time. Then she straightened the nearest candle, turned around and went back to work. She refilled glasses. She smoothed over a brewing argument between 2 minor lords before it became a scene. She smiled the smile she had perfected, the one that revealed nothing, and she stayed until the last guest left and the great hall went quiet and gold. Then she sat down in an empty chair in the middle of that silent, beautiful room that she had built, and she let herself feel it. All of it. Every year of early mornings and midnight oil and quiet sacrifices and small hopes she had nursed in the spaces between their conversations. She felt the full weight of it and then slowly she set it down. Not in anger. She had no anger. Only a clear and quiet understanding, the kind that comes after years of knowing something and finally allowing yourself to know it. She was not the one he had chosen. She was the one he had needed. And those two things she understood now were not the same. She stood up. She went to the throne room. She placed the royal seal on his desk, left 14 pages of handover notes, and walked out before dawn. Idren found the notes at first light. He read them once quickly, the way you read something when you are hoping you have misunderstood it. Then he read them again. Then he sat very still in the throne room where Mira had spent 7 years holding everything together, and he did not move for a long time. Corvin appeared in the doorway an hour later, carrying a leather folio. His face was wrong, too careful, the expression of a man delivering news he has been dreading. "She's gone," Idren said. It was not a question. Before dawn. She took very little. Corvin set the folio on the desk beside the seal. "I compiled this. I thought you should see it." Idren opened it. Inside was a list, handwritten, dense, pages long. Every system Mira had built or maintained or quietly saved. The northern grain route she had renegotiated 3 times. The school expansion in the southern townships that bore no one's name. The border truce she had held together with patience and precision for 4 years. The winter supply routes. The trade agreements. The countless crises she had resolved before anyone else knew they existed. He read every page. When he was done, he closed the folio and sat with it in his lap and understood, for the first time, what he had been looking at for 7 years without ever truly seeing. Vessen found him there at noon. She stood in the doorway for a moment, reading the room the way intelligent people read rooms, and then she walked in and sat across from him without being invited. "She's gone," Idren said again. "I know. I didn't." He stopped. Started again. "I never meant for her to feel." "Idren." Vessen's voice was not unkind, but it was direct. "You looked past the woman who loved you. For 7 years she held this kingdom in her hands and you saw the kingdom. You did not see her." She paused. "She didn't leave in anger. Do you understand that? She left because she understood you clearly. She saw exactly what she was to you, and she was too honest to pretend otherwise." The silence stretched. "She was always the one," Vessen said quietly. "I think some part of you knew that. I think that is why it was so easy to let her be invisible, because if you looked directly at her, you would have had to choose. And choosing is frightening." She stood. "Go and choose, Idren. Before she decides she is better off without you. She might be right." He rode alone. The road to Thornmere took 2 hours through open country, and he spent every minute of it replaying moments he had not understood when they were happening. The night they had worked until dawn on the Veyron preparations, and she had laughed at something he said, and the sound had stayed with him for days afterward, and he had filed it away as nothing. The morning she had walked into his first council session with a document that saved his reign, and he had thought, capable. He had not thought, extraordinary. He had not thought irreplaceable. He had not thought her. He had just kept going. And she had kept coming back. And he had mistaken her constancy for permanence, the way people mistake a river for a road, assuming it will always be there, never thinking about what it costs the water to keep moving. He found her in a small garden at the edge of the valley. She was kneeling in the soil, planting something, unhurried, deliberate, at peace in a way that cut him open because he understood it. She had found stillness. She had set down the weight she had been carrying for 7 years, and she had found, beneath it, herself. She looked up when she heard him. She did not look surprised. She did not look angry. She looked at him the way she had always looked at him, clearly, directly, without performance, and waited. He dismounted. He stood at the edge of the garden. He did not know how to begin, so he began with the truth. "I read Corvin's pages," he said. "All of them." "I know you would," she said. "Eventually." Mira. His voice broke on her name. Just slightly. Just enough. I spent 7 years watching you hold everything I had built, and I never once asked what it was costing you. I never once looked at you and said, you. Not the work. You. He exhaled. I was a fool. I was a blind, comfortable fool, and I am not asking you to forgive that quickly. I am only asking, can I try? Not as your king. As a man who is finally seeing you. The way I should have from the beginning. She was quiet for a long moment. The garden was still around them, and the valley was gold with late afternoon light, and somewhere in Ironfeld Keep the Embervale Festival was beginning without either of them. I never wanted the throne, she said at last. I never wanted the title or the crown or any of it. She looked at him steadily. I wanted to be the one you chose, not the one you needed. A pause. There is a difference, Idrun, and I needed you to know that there is a difference. I know, he said. I know that now. She searched his face for a long time. Whatever she found there must have been enough, because something in her shoulders eased, not defeat, but the careful lowering of a guard she had held for 7 years. Then we start from here, she said. Differently. Openly. I will not be invisible again. You will not, he said. I promise you that. 1 year later, the Embervale fires rose above Ironfeld Keep on a clear autumn night, and for the first time in 7 years Mira Dawnhollow stood beside the High King in full view of the council, the lords, and every person in the keep who had long understood what the king had been too blind to see. Lord Harkon Dusk, who had never been known to say anything sentimental in his life, looked at her across the council table and said simply, it was always her. Selarin wept. She had been waiting 7 years to weep. Corvin said nothing. He did not need to. He had written the pages. A letter arrived from Vessin Caldray, now settled in the eastern provinces, short and warm. Asterisk, she was always the right one. The keep is luckier than it knows. Asterisk. And in the new garden that Mira had planted in the keep's eastern courtyard, with her own hands without decree or ceremony, because she wanted something in this stone place that had grown from her choosing, the first of the winter flowers had opened overnight. Small and white and unhurried. Exactly like her. That evening, before the festival fires were lit, Idrun found her on the upper terrace. They stood together looking out over the kingdom as the sky deepened from amber to violet. I used to be afraid, he said, that you had taken the heart of this place with you when you left. She glanced at him. I left the kingdom for you to find. I never took it with me. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. The Embervale fires rose. The kingdom glowed. And Mira Dawnhollow, who had spent 7 years being needed, stood finally in the open, finally named, finally chosen. Asterisk, if this story moved you, please subscribe, leave a comment below and give this video a like. It helps more people find stories like this one. See you in the next one.